Hello, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, and today I want to talk about the dark night of the soul. So, this is a very common kind of term in spirituality and personal growth, and pretty much, I would say everyone out there has kind of heard of the term dark night of the soul. And I feel like this concept is actually pretty misunderstood, and of course, it's very much rejected, and we don't like them, and they can be very painful. So today in this video, basically what I want to talk about is, what is a dark night of the soul really? What's really going on when we are experiencing a dark night of the soul? Like what it feels like on kind of like a surface level, what it can kind of look like in your life, and what's going on a deeper level, and how to navigate your way through a dark night of the soul in a way that can actually, number one, make it not so painful, okay? And number two, can lead you where the dark night of the soul is trying to lead you, okay? So first things first, how do you know when you're in a dark night of the soul? So this is very interesting because the first kind of thing to understand is that there are sort of two camps of these dark nights of the soul, okay? The first camp is everything is going fine in my life. Nothing really changed. I still have my job, I still have my relationships, I still have my health, I still have whatever. Everything seems fine, and yet I feel really depressed or really anxious or just this hollow, aching dissatisfaction with my life. Like, I used to be a happy person and everything was fine and I could kind of live my life the way that everyone else was, and maybe like there were things that I didn't like or whatever, but I wasn't, right? I was okay. And then all of a sudden, or over a very kind of short period of time, it's like something switched in me, and now I like I say, I'm listless, I'm hopeless, I don't have the energy to do the things I used to do, I feel completely uninspired by my life, I feel lost, and like, right? And there's kind of this overarching feeling of just like this hollow, aching, like meaninglessness that you feel, listlessness, loss of energy, loss of enthusiasm, loss of just drive to do anything. Okay, so that's the first kind of way that a dark night of the soul can happen to you. Nothing in your external reality necessarily changes, but you have like this emotional break that just makes it so that you just don't care anymore. Or everything is painful, everything is hard, everything feels hollow and aching, and you don't know what you're doing, okay? The second way it happens is your life falls apart, right? So you get fired from your job, your love of your life leaves you, you get sick, someone that you really love gets sick, people pass away, or a combination of these things, right? Like, it can be like, a lot of the time too with dark nights of the soul, it's like a compounding of things, right? It's like you lose your job and your husband or your partner and your close friend gets sick and you get sick, and like all this stuff all happens at once. Your children get sick or something goes on with them, or you lose a relationship, all this stuff, and things seem to compound, and then you get to this point where you're like, holy shit, like my whole life fell apart and I have no idea what to do. I have no idea where to go from here, right? And then there's the kind of, I said there was two, but there's also the third one where you get to the point where you get so sick of your life that you kind of like throw everything away, right? Like you are the one that, like, you quit your job, you leave your relationship, you make all these changes in your life, and then you end up in this place where you're like, holy shit, what did I do? And you feel lost, right? So like I say, no matter how the dark night of the soul kind of like came upon you, right? Nothing changed, it was just an emotional thing, your external circumstances changed around you, or you made a whole bunch of changes to your external circumstances which led you to feel like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm doing and I don't know where I am. What you're going to end up with is this feeling of emptiness. You're going to feel lost, you're going to feel abandoned by the universe, you're going to feel abandoned by God, you're going to feel dark and heavy and depressed and anxious and confused. And like I say, especially this like hollow, aching, like what the heck is the point of life feeling, right? And this is what we call a dark night of the soul, right? Where you've lost your footing, you've lost your center, you've lost your capacity to look at your life and find the meaning in it, and find the anchor points, and find the drive to continue on, okay? And so this reminds me, first before we go on, of a quote from Jesus, actually, where he says, don't follow me if you need a place to rest your head. Because me being the Son of God, or whatever he says, right? And that's up to interpretation. But essentially what he says is that, when you follow this path, this awakening path, this path of coming into alignment with who you are, this path of awakening, essentially, there is nowhere to lay your head. And what he means by this is that you are going to be in a constant state of losing your foundation, right? Losing the thing you thought that you could anchor yourself to. And that is really what a dark night of the soul is, okay? It's you coming face to face with the idea that what you have been anchoring yourself to for your entire life up until this point isn't real, okay? So not real as in that it doesn't exist, right? But it isn't real in the sense that it isn't who you really are, right? That is what a dark night of the soul is you start to lose your capacity to find your identity in your external world. You start to lose your capacity to find your value in your external world. You start to lose your capacity to find your meaning for being, your meaning of life, your motivation, your foundations, right? Your purpose in the external world. And that is what's happening in a dark night of the soul, right? So when you feel like all of a sudden everything that used to matter doesn't matter anymore, right? That's your soul waking up and being like, hey, this isn't it, right? All of these things you've attached yourself to, not the thing. Not the thing that gives you meaning, not the thing that gives you purpose, not who you really are. When the whole world falls apart around you, same thing, right? That's the universe sending you a gift to say, hey, all of this stuff that you thought you needed to be happy and that you thought you needed to, stay centered in who you think you are and what you think life is and what you think your value and your worth is as a person, not a thing, right? And then when you get rid of everything and you throw everything out, but then you don't know what it is that you're replacing that with, same thing. You lose your foundations. You lose the place to lie your head. And so if we understand that this is really what's going on in the dark night of the soul, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to avoid the biggest mistake that most people make when they are in the middle of a dark night of the soul, which is they try to either quickly rebuild a new life that has things in it to give them meaning and passion and purpose, or people go about trying to replace the world that they had that's gone now, right? So, for instance, when you lose your job and someone gets sick and all these things happen, a lot of the time when we enter these dark nights of the soul, we keep waiting for life to go back to the way that it was. And this is the number one biggest thing that's going to make your dark night of the soul the worst thing ever, okay? Because life isn't going to go back to the way it was. That is the whole point of the dark night of the soul, is to shift you to a new place. It's there to help you see in a very dramatic, very hardcore way who you have been thinking that you are and how different that is from who you truly are, okay? And I can say this because I've been through several dark nights of the soul, okay? I've been through all three of the ways that a dark night of the soul can happen, right? I've been just living life and everything was fine, and then all of a sudden I lose it. And I would say that was kind of the first, 16 years of my life. I was into dark night of the soul for the first 16 years of my life, trying to make myself care about stuff, and I couldn't, right? And life was just really, really hard and really, really hollow and really, really painful. And then I made all the big shifts, right, threw everything away, and ended up with kind of a very empty life. And again, just holy shit, what am I doing? What is this? What is life? What's the purpose? What's the purpose of me? All these things that I thought that I had built to be who I was and to be what made me special and to be what made me valuable and were supposed to be the things that got me up in the day and got me going in the morning aren't there anymore. And I didn't have anything to replace them with. And then I also had the carpet ripped out from under me many times in life, where the universe just said, okay, we're just going to take this away, right? The stuff that you're starting to attach yourself to, we're just going to pull it out. And so, like I say, I understand the impulse to that the first thing you want to do is you want to replace it. You want You want to rush ahead to fill your life back up, right? You want to find the thing that's going to make you passionate. You want to find the thing that's going to make you, right? You want to find the job, find the partner, find the new life that's going to work for you. And what I'm saying is, if you can understand, number one, first and foremost, that what has been removed, what is gone, right? The things that you're no longer passionate about, you're not going to become repassionate about them. The job that you lost, you're not going to get that job back again, right? The relationship that's gone, even if you get back together with that person, it's going to be a whole new different relationship. And so if you can first allow yourself to say, okay, the old world is dead, right? I'm in this dark night of the soul. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's happening, but trying to get myself back to where I was before this happened isn't going to happen. Okay? So that's the first thing to tell yourself. Let yourself mourn the loss of what is gone now, right? Let yourself mourn the loss of that old life. Even if it was terrible and you hated it, it's still what was familiar to you, okay? And you have to let yourself mourn the loss of it. You have to let yourself say, okay, that thing is gone and it's not going to be again, right? And then the second thing is, what is this dark night of the soul trying to show me that I truly am? Because that's what the dark night of the soul is. It's trying to drive you inside so that you will find yourself. That's it. That's the kit and caboodle of a dark night of the soul. And if you understand that, you can actually turn your dark night of the soul into a beautiful, expansive, self-exploratory time that you will actually get to a point that you actually enjoy it, okay? Because it's usually, like I say, the fact that we have so deeply rejected who we truly are, and we have created lives for ourselves that are out of alignment with who we are, and we need to understand that eventually, like, the truth always wins. The truth always comes out. We're never going to be able to live an entire lifetime out of alignment with ourselves, where the universe or ourselves or whatever you want to, like our higher selves, whatever you want to think of it as, doesn't step in and try and get rid of it for you. Okay? These tragedies happen for a reason, to drive you inside so that you can find real meaning. You can find real purpose. You can find your real authentic self. Okay? You can learn to love these parts of yourself that you have been rejecting, so that you can then go about, after that, building a life that actually aligns with who you are, because you know who you are, right? In this moment, if you're in a dark night of the soul, it's because you don't know who you are. You've lost sight of the truth of your being, and perhaps you never were consciously aware of that in this lifetime, right? And this is going to be a new thing for you. And so if you're experiencing this dark night of the soul, let go of what you have let go of, right? You've got to let go of that. You're not going back. You're never going back there. Even if you can get yourself to get back to those specific particular circumstances, you're not going to be the same, because this happened, okay? You've already seen too much, having lost it. And so you're not going to go back. You have to go forward, right? And the only way forward is in, right? The only way forward is in. The only way to the new life that the dark night of the soul is trying to lead you to is to find who you truly are on the inside. And even if you have like a terminal illness and you feel like this is the end, I'm not going to have a life after this, that is still what's going on here. You can wait to the very last moment of your life to realize who you truly are, and it's still worth it to figure out who you truly are in the very last moment of your life, right? And sometimes it takes shaking us out of ourselves so deeply that we come near death before we're willing to say, okay, none of that stuff was real. None of that stuff is who I was. None of that stuff is who I am. And what I'm saying is, you don't have to wait that long. If you're willing to look at your dark night of the soul, the depression, the listlessness, the loss of energy, the anxiety, all the things that you feel, the confusion, the having nowhere to lay your head, right? If you can look at that and say, okay, this is trying to show me where I have attached myself to things that are not who I am. And this is trying to show me where I have rejected the authentic parts of myself, where I have been running from being in my own presence, where I have been rejecting myself to such a degree that I won't be with me, that I won't look at me, that I assume everything about me is wrong, right? This is where most of us are at. And sometimes it takes getting everything ripped out from you before you're willing to just stop and say, okay, what? What? What do you want me to see? What do you want me to know? So so my biggest tip, besides letting yourself mourn the loss of what will never be again in your dark night of the soul, is to look at all of these feelings and everything that's happening, all of the circumstances, whatever it is that's making up your dark night of the soul, and asking yourself, how is this helping me? How is this blessing me? What am I trying to show myself here? What am I not seeing about who I am, about the truth of myself and the truth of the universe that this dark night of the soul is trying to show me? Because again, eventually at some point, you're not going to let yourself carry on down a track that isn't in alignment with you. And the dark night of the soul is like the GPS system just finally just like blaring so loud that it like shuts off the car or something like this, right? That you've believed so many things about yourself that are not true, that you've rejected so many parts of yourself, that you've gone so far on a path that doesn't align with your highest joy and your highest expression and your highest frequency, that the GPS just short circuits everything. You can think of it like that, right? And so this is the other thing, is that if you're in a dark night of the soul, and I could say this from personal experience, you've probably gone so far away from yourself that it's going to take a while. And it's going to be a process to come back to relearning who you really are, and to discovering all the things that actually make you who you are, and letting go and shedding all these expectations you have of yourself, and all of this, what you think you should be, what you think you shouldn't be, all of these things that are causing you so much pain, right? It's all of that has built up and exploded. That's what a dark night of the soul is, right? It's all of that pain and all of that shame and all of that rejection and all of that not understanding who you are and going in a way that doesn't serve you, that finally boils over, because it's going to at some point, right? That's the point. That's the job of the emotional guidance system that you have. It's there to shut you down at some point if you're going to keep going in a way that doesn't serve you, okay? And also it's there to help you lose your identification with things that aren't to do with you, that aren't who you really are, that aren't really what make you you. And can be a very deep journey, right? Like I say, for some people it really is losing, like, oh my god, like losing your identification with your human self at all. That's going to be the journey that you're going to go on. And that's the other thing, is like the dark night of the soul is not the same for everybody. It's not always going to lead everybody to the same place, right? Some people's dark nights of the soul lead them to a whole new life, where they have a whole new career and a whole new partner and blah 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 blah. And some people's dark nights of the soul lead them to like a very monastic type of life where they don't fill it back in with a bunch of stuff, right? And they end up living just very, very simply. And some people, it is what happens to them at the end of their life, and it doesn't really matter how it's unfolding for you. The truth is, if it is unfolding for you, it's because your soul is screaming at you for recognition, and it's asking you to let go, right? It's asking you to let go of all the things that you're not. And that's what's so scary about it. And that's why we resist it, and that's why we run away from it. Because we feel like if we lose this, what are we? What do we have? Right? If I lose my identity as the person who does this, as the person who has this, as the being who does this, then what? Right? If I don't have this identity, then I'm nothing, I'm worthless, and blah, blah, blah. Right? And then oftentimes we don't get out of the dark night of the soul until we're able to let ourselves release that identity that we had. Okay, so how is this helping me? What's the identification here that is not who I really am? And this goes for any deep emotional pain that anyone is in. If you're in this place where life is just so deeply emotionally painful, you're believing something about yourself in the world that isn't true. So go inside. The only way through is in. Okay? So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them down below. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Join us in the Patreon group. We meet 3 times a month, and this, like, right? It can be very helpful to be with a group of people when you're going through something like this. And then other than that, leave me your questions, video requests, all that great stuff. and I will see you in the next video.